Hello, tubers. This is Pat Jordan coming to you from the Barnyard in Illinois with the second installment of Barnyard Banter, Barnyard Talks, or Barnyard Squawks. I haven't decided what rolls off the tongue like blueberries, maple syrup, and buckwheat pancakes for a good day of chores. These talks will feature one or more of who you already know as the Little Red Hens by reputation, but have never heard before. The Little Red Hens are surgically precise thinkers who are skilled in many topics that they are either interested in or that I have asked them to look into for the advancement of our overall work. The Little Red Hens have never been paid for what they do. However, the world owes them a debt for what they have provided selflessly for free that should have changed the face of the world if we were not all collectively shadow banned. I never date any of my personal work, so let us break with that convention to say that on January 29th, 2023, I had a conversation with Our Lady of Sardinia on a topic focused on Bartonella that went around the Continuum tilt-a-whirl, yet amazingly stayed on topic from beginning to end. This has been slightly edited to keep me from looking like a total doorknob, which is to imply that I still might look like a doorknob due to only 5 hours of sleep, but one of those tarnished brass round ones with that shiny spot on one high corner.
This paper that you sent me, it was about bacteria, the antidepressant and bacteria, because it just kind of flashed back to the Bartonella. How Bartonella is actually a lot of mammals have it, and it's very prominent. I would argue that between Lyme, Borrelia, and Bartonella, they probably take up the field equally.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, even Bruner would say that. And that one guy, Don Mao,
Exactly.
Don Mao says that Bartonella is even worse than the Borrelia.
I agree with Don Mao. Now, Don Mao has he has Morgellon. He has Morgellon disease, and he's the one that has videos on how to take turpentine. Have you ever watched those videos?
No, I haven't. I stay away from toxic paint thinners.
Well, I understand, but he has these videos nevertheless. Me too.
Yeah.
But, like there is a whole niche school of thoughts on turpentine.
And, recently, because one of our top Lyme researchers, he brought up the fact that termites can only survive if they got spirochetes in their gut that actually digest the wood for them. And so the control that they came up with, and I remember this from the 1970s, is if you spray them with a fungicide, a fungus, a pathogenic fungus, the fungus will kill the spirochetes in the termites' guts. It doesn't hurt the termites, but then they starve to death because they eat the wood and it doesn't get digested. So that was really, it just stuck in my mind. It's
okay.
Like bioremediation, but also the fact that, wait, do termites actually eat pine? Because pine would have turpentine in there. And I wonder what the effects of turpentine would be on us. And so, when I'm thinking about what people use as a remedy, well, if they're using turpentine, would a termite eating pine have any effect on the spirochetes in its guts? And, one of my main remedies was the ringing cedars resin. And it's like mixed terpenes. So yes. It would have turpentine in it, but with all the other terpenes.
And I have that oil from the cedar. I have two different type one I bought a couple years ago when you and I were talking about this pine oil from the cedar of Russia. There's all that, there is another narrative behind that. And then somebody sent me one from Russia, a Russian authentic one also, apparently. It's all in Russian, but I have them. I took them for a while, but I don't know, like it's hard to tell, I guess, because in the meantime, what happens is that when you're sick for a very long time, you don't know if you're getting better sometimes or your body has adapted
right
to the parasites. That's another thing. And I would be more willing to say that your body has the ability to adapt. So the terrain adapts instead than the entity occupying that terrain. Your terrain starts to adapt. It's the opposite. And I think that's exactly what happens. And I think you get used to low energy. So your body starts to manage with low energy for so long that at the end was like, oh, look, I'm better. Are you better? Or your body has adapted to that level. So to me, that one alone, it's a very interesting question to study, where people say, yeah, I got much better. Yes. Some symptoms, I'm sure they get better because I have symptoms that I don't have anymore. But some other things, are they really, you got better or your body has managed it so well that now you think you're better? Make sense?
Well, you see, you got my mind in that zone when I said I barely breathe. So when I am at rest, I'm barely breathing. When I work, I can work really, really hard and not be short of breath. Sometimes I am, like when I'm low on iodine. But I can work hard and not be short of breath. And it's strange to me that it's not shallow breathing, but I'm not breathing at a rate that I typically would in my youth before I got really sick. And you brought up, this is like deep sea, holding your breath, like pearl diving. And you said it was a form of adaptation.
Apnea, yeah. Yes.
And so my other view, I heard exactly what you said. I agree with it. One of my takes on it is this. In real life, parasites don't set out to kill a host because the host is their sugar daddy. Now, things change with DARPA, and we don't live in nature anymore. But that is the way the parasites used to behave.
Exactly.
And so this adaptation that we're talking about is like kind of a detente. The parasites know that they push you too far, you're going to get sick and die. And then they don't have like a taxi to take them to Disney World. So I think the body and the organisms, they find a homeostasis. You're still sick, but you're not so sick that you're bedbound and you're about to turn into humus.
Yes, and of course, this is our theory because, the parasites, when you're parasited at first, whether it's a protozoa, where is a virus or a bacteria or a nanobacteria, you have a stage of acute infection. And I think that acute infection in every human being is an assessment of the terrain and how adaptable is the terrain to the parasite. And so I think past that stage, then you have this stage that is longer, it's forever, where you have all the symptoms. There is no linearity. There is no linearity in the symptoms. The symptomatic is no linear. One day you're good, one day you're bad, one day, 10 days you're bad. Okay. Then you start a treatment, and the treatment do not show any linearity. So so that I would say that within the inconsistency, there is a consistency there. and then after years and years of being used to this state of a physical state where you're nauseous, you get some days they're less, but at one point you're kind of get used to it, but your brain does not understand when you're getting used to it, so you get your body becomes learn how to manage it, kind of like you're saying, when I work, I'm barely breathing, but then how can I perform that way? Well, maybe that's a symbiotic relationship between you and the parasite.
Right.
I mean, just like, hey, I want to live too, it's kind. I mean, it's a theory. It is a theory, but in my opinion, it makes it so much better than all these idiots trying to tell us that you got to treat more, suffer more, treat more or suffer more because the road is very rocky before you feel better. It sounds like to me very religious too, doesn't it?
Oh, see, yeah, because you just commented on that diatribe I just sent out to some new age guru idiot. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that new age. It's actually he was talking about that's basically the foundation of Christianity. It's funny because New Age it's none of less of a CIA project.
Yeah.
But the guy that's actually this foundation of Christianity, that your body is just an experience or whatever. Just give me all your money.
Oh, I love
Just give me all your money and live in poverty.
pay for your e-ticket. Yeah. Here's a
because if you don't do that, you're right.
And see, what fascinates me is... Go ahead.
No, go ahead. What fascinates you? Go ahead.
Well, people are acting like you will own nothing and be happy as some new thing. You look at the Buddhist priests. They go out every day begging for rice. And you just talked about the Catholics. Give us all your money and we'll give you a pass, through purgatory. It's always been the upper control echelon has impoverished everything below it. And what that is, that's parasitism. And so we just talked through 3 different topics, and they're absolutely, each one is related.
Yes. And, we were talking about topics, and I had a list of topics, and so we can talk about different things. But when you send this paper about mental illness and antidepressant connected to bacteria, I know that from studying Bartonella. Yeah, so I know that from studying Bartonella, most people who suffer from Bartonella, and the classic example is the crazy cat lady. Okay, why the crazy cat lady is crazy? Well, is it because she has a lot of cats or because the cats gave her something to make her crazy? And it is that the cats gave her something to make her crazy.
Right.
And so, because we know that the cats are main carrier of Bartonella, and 99% of feral cat has it. But what's interesting through my studies and research on what I call it esoteric knowledge and Gnosticism, I came across a video cast by a professor who actually talks about animals on Earth who have been, they have not been here on Earth for a long time. And the cat is one of those animals that appear on Earth about 6,000 years ago. Suddenly, this animal appeared 6,000 a year ago, 7,000 years ago.
I never heard of that.
No, I'm not. I'm telling you that. Yeah, listen. And so there's a series of animals, and I'm going to find. I actually did not look through. I did not look for any papers, but this guy explain that the cat is a very interesting animal because it's a cross. Apparently, has DNA of some reptile. In fact, the cat purrs, like it makes that sound.
Yeah.
But also the cat eye is a reptilian eye, and it's the only. Apparently, the cat has a mix of DNA.
You are freaking
But what's interesting is that in cancer research, they use cats. I'm sorry. I wanted to bring this to this topic because I think this topic it's like you said that you have always spoke about the continuum loop, where it's a continuum loop. It is a continuum loop, and this is another proof that this is a continuum loop.
It is.
And so the cat. Okay, the cat is used in cancer research because the cats have the same disease that human beings have. For example, cats have HIV just like human beings have. Okay, cats have leukemia like human beings have. Now, I know from my studies of Bartonella that Bartonella, it is the cause of leukemia. Okay, it is the cause because it goes in a bone marrow and it makes a copy of itself and blah 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 blah. Okay, so we know that makes it's basically the progenitor cells are in a bone marrow. It makes a mirror copy, a Xerox copy of itself, and then cats seems to have the same type of process of disease development as human beings when they have cancer. So in research, cats are used to figure out cancer research, cancer cure. We don't call them cure treatments, money-making stuff. Okay, but that's beside the point. The point is that cats seem to be a hybridization. This is what I want to get to. A hybridization between reptilian DNA and human DNA. That's what should freak you out. That is the part that should freak you out. That there were animals on Earth, such as there were animals on Earth, such as the horse, the chicken, the pig, the cow, and they never spoke about the dog. The cat was an animal that they really stayed on a cat. What's interesting, if you go to ancient Egypt, the cat was venerated as the divine creature. Okay, and mummified. They also find mummies of the cat. So if you were the Egyptian worshipped the cats. Okay. However, in the Middle Ages, the cat, after this is kind of Christianity came, and then suddenly the cats were evil creatures. And so to me, there is a mythological belief there that is attached to some dark realities where the cat is probably a hybridized creature of a previous civilization that came here that has basically created us as a slave species to serve them. This civilization has come up with a religion. Okay, and they had to give us also pets, and they had to give us animals, just like they had probably, and they play with genetics. That's why human beings are so fucking obsessed with genetics, because we are a little bit of this civilization. You probably think I'm really crazy, but that's okay.
No,
but that's okay.
That's your word.
So going back to going back to the cat with Bartonella, what I find very intriguing about Bartonella was the Bartonellosis. It's known across the scientific community, especially zoologists. Is known as usually 4 or 5 different species of Bartonella. But however, at the Bartonella Symposium Continuum in Japan in 2018, I believe, they have classified about 38 species of Bartonella. And the scientists just quite cannot wrap their head around the fact that is Bartonella was already this many species, or this is a series of subspecies that they keep adapting to a different kind of host. Okay. And so the other thing that I wanted to say is that every person who has a cat, every person that I know who has a cat has some kind of depression or some kind of mental illness. Let's call them mental illness. I really do not like to call the mental illness anymore, because if they're caused by a bacteria, I don't know. Are they really mental illness at this point? I don't know.
Right.
But I just find a correlation between the ownership of cats, more or so, and depression and anxiety and a series of mental illness. Again, I put that in quote. I find that very curious. And also the correlation between HIV and Bartonella. But we know that every person who has HIV also has Bartonella usually, which is Bartonella encellae. Okay, so the scientific community knows this, but it's not something that you find in your regular magazine. You really have to dig down in scientific papers to find this kind of stuff. And there's so far only about 3 researchers who focused exclusively on Bartonella. And the other thing I wanted to tell you, it's about Brucella, as you well know yourself. Brucella is a distant cousin of Bartonella. Okay. Now, what's interesting to me was, as you know, the other day, I just found out that I was looking for a company, a local farmer who had goat milk. And we talked about goat milk, the difference between goat milk and cow milk, right? We talked about that. We talked about the casomorphin, okay? And I told you that goat milk does not seem to have casomorphin. So what was interesting that I found a farmer here that raised goats, and they produce goat milk, and they widely advertised, this is very intriguing to me, they advertised that their goats were tested to be completely negative to Brucella. So that brought up another problem, another issue to me. It's like, oh, how interesting. Now, I do wonder if the Bartonella, the goat milk is not a milk that you find very easily. I wonder if the cow milk on top of the Babesia also has strains of Bartonella at this point,
sense.
Right? Because they will want you infected with something like that is actually way more difficult to get rid of Lyme, Borrelia. And we know, you and I know what Borrelia is. Borrelia is none less than a genetically modified syphilis. We understand that, okay? And I think after 7,000 years, 6,000 years, the syphilis has done a life course where it adapted to its host so well that it's not displaying the usual physical manifestation that the old-fashioned syphilis will have in the bodies.
Right.
There were skin manifestations of syphilis, exactly. And you talked extensively on that in your book about Dr. Jenner, right? And you have a chapter. You talk about it, not in that book, in a second book that you wrote. I can't remember. 999. Yeah, 999. Yes, I think that's what it was. Was that book? 99. IC 99.
Give me some more background. I got 25 books, and I have a hard time remembering.
Oh, yes. You were talking about how syphilis, how the smallpox vaccine from Dr. Jenner. It could be none of less that actually a syphilis-based vaccine.
Oh, see,
Actually,
there was an interesting back and forth because Edgar Cruikshank was a contemporary of Charles Creighton. And Cruikshank thought that what Jenner was scratching into people was merely rinderpest, which is cattle measles. Crichton was absolutely certain that he was just scraping syphilis into people. And, you know, even before I came up with my meme, all the above, back then I was aware that all this pus was unknown. And so my mind was going, well, why wouldn't it be all of them? So that takes us back.
Well, yeah, we say all of them because in that way we don't make.
Go ahead.
I say in that way we don't make a mistake, and okay, it could be all of them.
Well, but see, it's not even about making like an academic error and going, yeah, I thought it was rinderpest, but it turned out to be syphilis or vice versa. What it is, it was unknown pus. And so they were taking like just pus from lesions, often from the genitals of cows, putting it into human beings, and then they would sometimes go arm to arm from human being to human being. And so now you got like, and it's not even special. It's crossing classes of mammals. And you got like cows, goats, sheep. I'm trying to think of what Jenner was experimenting with. Horses. And then you're mixing human beings, and since it's unknown pus, every single disease that's in every single host could be at any time transferred to the next person. And then you got like this amplifying, like it's just an orgy of pathogens and completely uncharacterized. Nobody knew what they were doing then. They were just putting unknown pus into people. And so, you know, was it rinderpest? You bet. Was it syphilis? You bet. Was it anything else? Oh, of course it was, because it was unknown pus. And so you can't make an error by saying, yeah, all of the above, because it had to be. Scientifically, it had to be whatever was in. The thing that spurred all this was a paper that was sent to us by a woman in Belgium. And I had never seen this before, but if I did, then, you know, my Alzheimer's kicked in, and it's like I'd never seen it before, that antidepressants actually foster superbug mutation. And so bring that to us in
I believe so.
Like Borrelia and Bartonella, and I mean it would be Bartonella and Brucella. But finish your thing about the goats, because that is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. So apparently the goats. I don't know if they're more prone to brucella or less prone, but goat's milk seems to be way cleaner than cow milk. And we know that cow milk scientifically has casomorphin, which we know that can trigger herpes and it can trigger oncoherpes. Okay. So the question that I had with was that then we are having a type of milk that also, in an animal that also does not could carry like Bartonella. Because if it doesn't have brucella, to me, it could be that the animal would not carry also Bartonella. So it makes so much sense that the milk is more digestible and all that. Okay. So we figured that out. But my thing was about the Bartonella. It was how the Bartonella, it is a very particular class of bacteria that I doubt that this is a bacteria that is natural, just like Borrelia is not an organic bacteria. I believe the Borrelia, it is 100% a genetically modified bacteria. Like I said, from syphilis, goes back to what the Nazis were experimenting before World War II. They were working on this, and then eventually it was developed as a weapon of numbing down, literally bringing down people energy. But it wasn't. It didn't happen the way they wanted to happen. I think they really wanted to use it on a battlefield to be quick, but it wasn't quick. It's not effective at that level with soldiers. Like if you do that, it's not.
Death by chronic
So I'm not sure if this was then when it was released. Yeah, exactly. Right. But I think with Bartonella, we have something similar went on with Bartonella, but in a different way. And I think Bartonella is classified as a is classified as a bacteria and a nanobacteria by some. And there was a paper that I sent you a very long time ago, maybe it was 4 years ago. And in this paper actually disputed the fact that the Bartonella, it's not a nanobacteria, but it's actually a virus.
Oh.
And that is a paper that actually was flagged. I sent it to you on Gmail, and the paper never made it to you. And I had to call the server. Which was, you explained it to me. I never got the paper because your server didn't send it to me. And when I talked to my server, they explained to me that the paper was flagged, but they did not know why. They really did not know why. They say it was flagged by our computer because the headline content. Oh, are you kidding me? So I thought I was onto something here because it probably was flagged by the AI, and this is exactly the truth. The truth is that a virus, Bartonella, is probably just a virus. It's probably a nanobacteria. I think they're man-made bacteria or whatever entity is making those things. But yeah, they're man-made bacteria. And I think all the different species, it's a species that was made in a certain way and it got out of hand.
Right.
Just like Borrelia, but I think it's way worse than Borrelia. It got literally out of hand. And now they have all these subspecies, and they didn't expect these species to create their own environment and their own subspecies. I think this is pretty much what happens in a science world when things get out of hand. They don't want to say anything. They don't investigate because they just have created this problem and they don't know how to fix it. I think that's also another explanation, And of course, at one level, it's also convenient. I can see why, because if I was an evil person, that sounds like, oh, okay, it's a happy mistake. I look at that from an artistic point of view. It's an happy mistake. It can be used in another way,
Yeah.
Now that's okay. We don't have to subdue an entire army, but how about we can subdue an entire population and now we don't need an army anymore?
Oh,
Isn't
my
this
God,
great?
that's brilliant. Yes, that's exactly how they reason this shit out.
Do you see? I mean, because there is always that part. That's exactly right. And I think it's once you get into the mindset, it's kind of scary to think that, and now I'm thinking like they are thinking.
Yeah. And see, I'm gonna transfer now from talking just between you and me.
I think the reason, yes,
just between you and me is how I like to structure conversation. It's just you and me talking, and other people are listening. But I also like to engage the audience to say, does anybody know anyone that doesn't have chronic fatigue? Because that is the number one complaint that I get from people all around the world. I am too tired to even get up and do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the deployment of these weapons is complete.
100%.
And since you know full well that things like Bartonella, it's called intraerythrocytic parasites. So erythrocyte is a red blood cell. Intra means inside. So they can invade a red blood cell and basically disable it. But if the red blood cell is what delivers oxygen to your body, and it literally is a first responder. White cells are kind of like a delayed response to infection, but a red cell can like surround and give oxidative bursts to invaders. If you take the red cell out, you've taken out your first responders. And so if you're disrupting like the oxygen metabolism, you're going to have things like anxiety, panic, and depression. And that was another side topic that you had brought into this, where you're talking about the cats, you know, the manifestation of Bast, B-A-S-T, you know, the cat goddess from Egypt, where you're so deadly tired and you're so unmotivated. And then you've got depression because why? When the brain does not have oxygen, it feels like I'm going to die. That's the definition of like depression and anxiety. All caused by a military weapon that came from a reptile, feline, hybrid goddess from fucking... no longer Family Show. The hieroglyphs of Egypt,
or maybe from the Babylonian, from the Sumerian, the Anunnaki. I think that's where the whole story of the creation start from, and I've been looking into it in depth in the past years or so.
See, you're making me doing searches in the background. Now I'm curious. Where cats show up in the Sumerian legends. You keep talking. I'm just going to do a search.
Yes. And so the cat is very symbolic of ancient Egypt. And so, it seems that they were obsessed with this cat cult. And that's what's interesting was that after Christianity, there was a movement in the Middle Ages of a group of people who actually were some sort of cats worshiper, and they were called the Cathars. And the Cathars were some sort of cat worshiper, but they were persecuted. They were heavily persecuted. And by the church. So it seems to me, so the connection that I made was that the church seemed to be very against this. So Christianity seems to be very against. And I don't understand why. So there's seems a contrast of there. I think it's always about power at the end. But eventually they were persecuted. So the cats were considered evil and all that kind of stuff. Right? All this thing. And this group of people called the Cathars, they live in France, and there were a couple of them in northern Italy in the beginning of the lower Middle Ages. They were persecuted and literally genocide. They were kind of like the hippie of the Christians.
Oh, I love it.
That's my understanding, So the hippie of the Christian movement. Yeah, so that's what my understanding from what I heard the scholars talking about this group. And they kind of didn't worship the cat. They had a little bit of mixed Christianity with this cat worshipping. And so again, it sounds like there is an hybridization of this animal, the cat, and biology tell us it's the evolution of the lynx, and it's not, because we know that the old biology kind of an invention of it's kind of a Masonic invention almost. This is all biology of evolution. Some of it, not all of it. Some of it, we know that there is always some lies and some truth. It's just the most difficult part is to identify what is the truth and what is the lie.
Yeah,
I think navigate through that. That is the most difficult part, in my opinion. So going back to the Bartonella and depression, every single antidepressant or anti-anxiety, okay, if a person is prescribed one of those things, oftentimes within they will have as a label that they will cause them, they're giving you something for depression, but it will say it may cause you more depression or suicidal thoughts. Well, that seems to me kind of counterproductive.
Yeah.
To give somebody something like that. They have made, so you know very well what it's all about with the depressant market, how big pharma basically market them. One of the things that the public is made lied to is that depression, it is a chemical imbalance. That's what everybody is led to believe, that there is a chemical imbalance. Yet medical science, psychiatry is never been able to tell us what kind of test they're using to measure this chemical imbalance, because there is no testing. It's all like a checkbox of clinical, some clinical symptoms. Okay, you have this. Oh, you have this. Oh, you have this. Oh, you suffer from anxiety. Well, does it sound scientific to you? Does it sound accurate? There's a total lack of accuracy. And then you're prescribing people with these antidepressants. They are chemicals who are suppressing natural occurring chemical in your brain. Okay. And so I'm thinking, if you're parasited by something like Bartonella, which is an intracellular bacteria that goes in red blood cells, which under a microscope, under the electronic microscope, if you have Babesia and you have Bartonella, they're both intracellular, okay? And Babesia is big. It's a big protozoa, so it covers Bartonella. So if you have a red blood cell and both blood cells, they're invaded by two parasites, you will not see under the microscope Bartonella. You won't see it because it's covered by Babesia. So Bartonella is using Babesia to shield itself. This is fascinating to me. Like if I was a biologist, this is totally fascinating. Okay. And so we know that if you give somebody a test, a blood test, one of those accurate one, for Bartonella, it's a different blood test than for Babesia to establish if you have either of the other. We know it's very difficult to establish if a patient has Bartonella or not, because apparently Bartonella can turn itself on and off and be active or not active. Well, what other pathogen we have that does that in our body that we're very familiar with? Herpes. Right. Herpes does exactly the same thing. It turns itself on and off. It works with the immune system. Okay, it works with the immune system. So the paper that I have sent you many years ago, it was about how Bartonella, it's not a nanobacteria, but it's a virus. I would say it's a man-made virus. Okay, and so the antidepressants are probably designed to keep this virus inside you.
Okay, writing it down.
Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me? I said I'm going to write it down now.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes. I'm sorry. I said a lot of things. I said a lot of things in a row. And but what I wanted to say was about the paper that you sent us. And also I want to connect to this old paper that I sent you about 5 years ago.
did
And
I
it was
ever
how Bartonella is not a bacteria, but a nanobacteria that has a lot of
did I ever tell you that I got that paper, or was it completely
Go
lost?
ahead.
Say it again.
No, I eventually was able to send it to you with a different subject line.
Okay. I'll look for it. I save everything, by the way. The cloud was invented to
Oh,
take
yes, I know.
everything from everybody and make it disappear, just like digital money.
Yes, I try to keep everything in my mind cloud.
Right.
So I try to keep as much as I can in my brain, because I know that everything that is digital can disappear tomorrow.
Yep.
And at that point, we just have to rely on anything that is either written material or the people who have the knowledge that, of course, myself, I could manipulate my own knowledge for my own benefits, correct?
Right.
Okay, so we always have to think about that. And people say, well, why would you do that? Well, I don't know. Maybe I wanted to start a new era where everybody's worshiping me.
Oh, I love it.
Instead.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to pick up point. I wrote, I always take notes. I want to pick up points that you put out there that most listeners are not anywhere close to the volume of information that you and I have been exposed to, the kind of analysis that we've done on it, the life experience that brought us to that point. And so it's just, for them, it's just a flood of one fact following another. But within Continuum, I can pick up my singular notes of things that you said and then tie them all the way back to a whole picture. And hopefully people will be able to see it from a big picture view rather than here's a fact, here's a fact, here's a fact.
Exactly.
You said humans have HIV. That's human immunodeficiency virus. But I remember, and as you mentioned,
yes.
Cats have a form of immunodeficiency virus. I remember from the 1960s, there were these 60s or like early 70s, really desperate public service announcements on Chicago media that cats had FLV, feline leukemia virus. And you had to be very careful with it because it was extremely contagious between cats and humans. So we just take that as they had to have released it as like a warfare agent in cats. Because what better way to get 80% of the population, because 80% of the population own pets, than to put it in a vector animal that is going to be in the large majority of people's houses. So we take that and we're projecting now that, well, maybe it is a weapon. And then you do your independent study and you come to the conclusion that Bartonella, which is cat scratch fever, which you're saying that, hey, maybe since it can infect all sorts of blood cells, maybe it's part of this, because you also suggested that Bartonella was not a nanobacteria, but a virus. Maybe it's part of the feline leukemia virus thing. I'm just throwing this stuff out there. And then we jump from what you think and what I think to what people, and people worship gurus. What Garth Nicholson came out, and at first I discounted everything he said. Well, number one, because he's supposedly former military intelligence, so that's the first big red flag. But the other thing that set me off is when you read his material, he will say that in I think it was the 1970s that Congress had tasked the pharmaceutical industry to come up with a biological agent of which there was no known cure. and they were going to use it as a weapon, even though, biological warfare was banned. What the hell does Congress care? And so Merck rose to the occasion, and this is Garth Nicholson's, this is how I paraphrase what he said. They took the nucleus of Brucella, which again is a nanobacteria. As you said, it's the cousin of Bartonella, cat scratch fever. They took the nucleus out and crystallized it. And he said that crystallized substance and the nucleus is like the genetic material. It's in the center of a cell. It's the process from which these cells can replicate. They took the nucleus, crystallized it, and he said it was so inert and not subjected to degradation that they could put it on chemtrails. And what he was doing, he was calling the nucleus a virus. But in his talks, he would call Brucella a parasite, a bacteria, and a virus, sometimes almost within the same sentence. And I'm going, this guy doesn't understand basic biology, but as time went by, and especially being exposed to Mel Thornberg's work, it's like, oh my God, he literally was telling the truth. And so let's examine it. Brucella can be an intracellular parasite. It can get into your blood cells and take it over. So was Nicholson, acting as a controlled opposition disinformer? Well, no, because it fits the definition of parasite. Was it a bacteria? Well, you're saying that after all that you looked into, it could be reclassified as not a nanobacteria, but as something else. But classically, when he was putting his information out there, the agrobacterium, which they use to make GMO crops, Brucella and Bartonella are classified as nanobacteria. And so he called it parasite, check mark. He called it a bacteria, check mark. And then he said the nucleus was used in chemtrails to deliver what anybody would call, and what he said was that was the birth of AIDS, HIV, leading to acquired immunodeficiency.
Exactly. And
was Brucella bits. It was the inside. It was the soft, chewy center. And so he called it a virus. And it's like, damn, check, 3 checks.
And HIV is considered a virus,
But what is a virus? I've done extensive work on this, and people still adopt the religion of there are no viruses. They've never been imaged. It's all, it's called in silico. It's all invented in computers, and they haven't isolated it. They haven't purified it. And it's like, let's just stop the bullshit. What is a virus? Well, in let's say the 1700s, they called it venom. What is venom? Venom is poison, and that's what it is. So we're only toxic, and you have stress because you had a bad hair day and you get the measles. It's like, okay, let's cut the bullshit. The actual definition of a virus is a self-replicating nanomachine. And so if you don't believe in viruses, you can't believe in the transhuman agenda. If you don't believe in viruses, you can't believe in CRISPR. Because what is CRISPR? It's a bacterial defense strategy to protect bacteria from being infected by viruses. And so, the virus deniers, the world will fall apart if they deny viruses, but they hold to it as like a religious belief. But if we simply recodify it, and one time I posted that in the comment section, and this one woman goes, "Oh, I never thought of it that way." It's a self-replicating nanomachine. And so if you can model nature, then you can turn it into a mechanistic tool or weapon for your own purposes. And so if you crystallize the nucleus of a Brucella, you just extracted, quote unquote, a virus from a bacteria that acts as a parasite. So everybody should just, get their panties out, from stuck between their butt cheeks and just ease into the fact that we don't live in a natural world anymore. So Deschamps, he doesn't apply. He might have applied back in his day, but even back in his day, Pasteur was literally using the forcing technique to make nature into weapons, because Pasteur had the hardest time. It took him months to years. And listen to me. I'm talking to the audience now. Everybody needs to listen to me. To adapt rabies into rabbit brains. He couldn't make it take.
Yeah.
Like, well, Jesus Christ, you got this thing that you think is a dread disease. I think it was like, just like Jenner. Jenner was actually traumatized when he was a kid, when he went through the smallpox burial agent. And so he took his childhood trauma.
It's possible, yes.
And he's projecting it onto the entire world by inflicting vaccination onto everybody. And so Pasteur, for whatever reason, he was traumatized by rabies, which wasn't really a thing. In terms of like a communicable disease, it's not even a blip on a statistical radar. But he made it into something because he forced it. And when you force things cross species, it always rises in virulence. But since, they're satanic and this is opposite day, they said, oh, well, Pasteur was attenuating the virus. No, it's not how it works. He took it from dogs, tried to attenuating to rabbits and other animals, and he had a hell of a time making that happen. But he finally got it done, and then he said, oh, look at, I passaged this 29 times, and now it's not as bad as it used to be, and now we can shoot it into humans. Oh, shit, that kid died. So what they're doing is they're weaponizing everything. And so I actually forgot I was going to tie rabies into the whole Brucella virus thing, and 5 hours of sleep left me with, I have no idea what I'm talking about now. What were you, it was something that you said that it's...
And the rabies.
Say it again.
Yes, the rabies alone it's a whole topic on its own.
Yeah, let's do
I
that.
said the rabies alone, it's a topic on its own,
I can't wait till we got a connection that doesn't have a 4-second delay, but yeah, let's do that sometime. What the hell were we talking
I know,
about?
seriously.
I always have a point. I can always tie it back in Continuum, and I lost hold of the ring.
Yes, I can still hear you, but I agree with about the rabies and how you tied it up to the brucella, and definitely this is a pathogen that is not organic. It was altered. If it was organic at one point, it was altered to be weaponized for us, not at our favor, to destroy us.
Well, isn't trench fever one of the species of cat scratch fever, of Bartonella, trench fever?
Yes, so trench fever, yes, it would be Bartonella and Enceli, I think it's the trench fever.
Okay. And so
there is like three different kinds. So
what was it, something that people got in the trenches in World War I, or was it something that they dumped in the trenches to see if people would get sick in World War I? And I think I got back on track. We're going to have to abandon the rabies thing. If my mind starts working again, we'll get back to that. But you had said that the Bartonella can hide under. Now, was it actually under, like, in layers under microscopy that you couldn't see it underneath the Babesia, or could it actually be inside the Babesia? You said the Bartonella could be masked.
No, it's like covers. When you look at a slide, mask, yes. When you look at a slide on a microscope, on an electronic microscope, you're going to see it just kind of like a naked eye. And so whatever it covers, so the Babesia it's bigger, and so it's underneath, not inside the babesia. No,
Okay.
no, it's underneath.
But then what was interesting,
It's kind
to
of piece
me-
of.
Go ahead.
It's like taking it's like a piece of paper covering a smaller piece of paper on the table.
Sure, I get it.
Basically, that's how I look at it.
But what you did is still in your talk.
And so
go ahead.
No, I'm saying, so looking at the microscope, which the microscope was a tool that allow us to diagnostic this blood disorder, because it is in a blood cell. So it is a blood disorder. Now you remove the microscope, as they've done in 2000, because the microscope is not allowed for diagnostic, unless you're doing research in a lab, okay, whatever. And now you remove that tool, the visual tool. That's literally a freaking visual tool that you remove that. Okay, not only it was hard enough visualizing, you need an expert microscopist and all that. Now you remove completely. Well, I'm sorry, now you have no diagnostic, and now you have a checklist. We're back to psychiatry, the made up discipline of medicine to cover up all their mistakes and all their bullshit. And so now you have no diagnosis whatsoever. It's whatever. Okay, now you have depression. Yeah, I can see that. I can see how this is done so well with intent. The intent, it is to remove the diagnostic. It's already very difficult to diagnose. And, there is also the narrative on how difficult it is to culture Bartonella. Well, why is it so difficult? Well, tell me, why is it so difficult? We are in an era of mRNA shots. We're doing genetic manipulation, but yet it's so difficult to diagnose Bartonella. It's very difficult to culture it. It just makes no sense. And I am an idiot. I'm stupid in a sense that I don't have the biology culture, the education background. I don't have a molecular microbiology background to understand it, but I understand that it can be that difficult.
You understand it better than most clinicians.
An excuse. That's what I want to say. Well, thanks.
So what I wanted to highlight is you said, and where have we seen this before? Where, because you had equated Bartonella to a virus, and it can hide underneath the babesia inside a cell. And you said, well, where have we seen this before? And when you said those words, I was writing down herpes being transported by yeast. And then you go, herpes. And it's like, damn, we are on the same wavelength, man. And so what it was called in the 1930s is Robert Hegner wrote a book that was called Big Fleas Have Little Fleas. It's called hyperparasitism. So that's why I asked if the Bartonella could ride inside the babesia, because smaller organisms can actually go into larger organisms, and then the immune surveillance can't even detect them. So if you're looking for herpes, you can't find it because it's being transported by the yeast. And then once it offloads from the yeast, then, I got a herpes outbreak. And why did that happen? Well, I was under stress and I had a bad hair day, and Lanka, Cowan, and Kaufman said that, it's all about the toxins. Yeah, I was toxic. It has nothing to do with the dandruff that came off of a spider suit that was made in a DARPA lab. It's good to hear you laugh.
Yep. And you know what? Yeah, it's funny because, it's very logical. Another thing, Bartonella does not need to ride a pathogen bigger than Bartonella itself, like Borrelia, for example. We do that with the filaria worm. Okay, we have seen from the work.
Oh, yeah. I need to write that down.
Nala doesn't need to do that because he has a better. Yeah. Because Bartonella is another. tool. But Bartonella is a retroactive, not a bacteria. So that's what so it's a bacteria that makes zombie copies of itself because it attacks the CD34, I believe, CD34, which is that progenitor cells. So once you attack the progenitor cells, that's your winning game. What the hell? You're winning now. You have come up at the beginning of the assembly line. So the beginning of the assembly line is that comes up damaged. Think about that. So that's how it brought to me why people who have leukemia are basically need a bone marrow transplant. Of course they do. Because you're trying to the damage of the assembly line, that whatever the juice you're trying to replace. That's why they need that. So the question is leukemia caused by Bartonella? And it's very high. For example, we have pediatric.
Hold on one second. Okay. I turned my phone off. Keep going.
Okay, so the question we have a lot of cases of pediatric leukemia. And so I'd like to see the causes. For example, if for cats, the leukemia for cats, it might is 100% caused by Bartonella. And so my question is for humans, is also for humans, especially for children, caused by Bartonella? And if it's so, how did they get it? Did they get it from a vaccine? Was that an inside vaccine, or did they get it the mother passed it through the child through placenta? I'm just very curious about that. I did not really look into that data on some of this data. It's very difficult to find because it was never gathered actually. So it's not that you can find it that easily,
Well, and see, what fascinates me is right now the AI is cracking down on all literature review. I never call it research. Research is when you take a supplement and you go, oh shit, that didn't work. I don't think I'll ever take that again. That's research. That's like experimenting on little furry creatures. Literature review is sitting on your, in my case, your skinny little ass that's nothing but bone, and searching the web for answers with a hostile AI that's parsing out only what it wants you to know. And it's getting harder and harder to do that every day. Well, what really surprised me is within the past couple of days, Rooster sent a paper that was written in 1916, put out by the Rockefeller Institute.
Oh, wow.
Written by some Japanese fella, where they took every carbohydrate they could think of and tried to feed it to syphilis just to see if it would eat it. Because a lot of things, bacteria, they have preferential fuel sources. So most bacteria, most of them, live on iron as a metal. And they also live on carbohydrates. But they have preferred menus. And so they were looking for, well, what does syphilis like to eat? And it turns out it's really not a sugar eater. It will tolerate certain sugars, and certain other sugars will kind of like inhibit its growth. Now, inhibition is not killing, and I'm all about killing the beast. But 1916, they did the serial testing, meaning, cereal as one after another, not like, hey, do you like alphabets? Do you like grape nuts? They did the serial laboratory testing to find out what syphilis
Got it.
And it's like, damn, we've been looking for shit like that for 3 years straight. And just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, our bench chemist from the Emerald Isle sends us this thing. And it's like, wow, where did that come from? Because the AI wouldn't let us see it before. Because this is all, when you put in absolutely specific search terms and you get nothing back, that's not, oh, well, it wasn't on the web. It's like, no, it's either been sanitized or the AI as a malicious entity is saying, oh, homie ain't going to see that. Just like that paper you said like 4 or 5 years ago. It was denied me back then. Now, I don't actually
Mm-hmm.
remember. I
Mm-hmm.
remember
Mm-hmm.
that exchange, but I don't remember the paper itself, so I'll go looking for it. And now it will be like really significant because we both have accrued knowledge and experience from that time. Whereas if I read it back then, it might not have been significant. But right now it is, and especially because we're talking about it, and especially because the AI didn't want me to see it.
Right, right. And you know, sometimes I go through tons of keywords on side dishes keywords too, where I try to trick the AI into researching something else, because it's a game actually. You know, it is a game of keywords out there where sometimes you will never know what comes out. But yes, it is. Some things are being hidden. I noticed that too recently. It's very difficult to find a certain kind of material that I already had looked in the past, and now I can't find it anymore. It's
Right.
frustrating.
Yep. And so let me pick up on another point that I think is significant
But
because
so this conversation,
go ahead.
no, I just want people to understand when they talk about antidepressant and people talk about big pharma
Hmm.
that first of all, there is a whole topic on that, or whether it's okay to be depressed or not. Well, the pseudoscience called psychiatry. I'm so sure people will be so upset that I'm saying that. To me, it's a freaking pseudoscience. Called psychiatry tells you that you cannot be depressed for more than so many days, and blah. You cannot have suicide thoughts and shit like that. So we have to establish first the old pattern of what is depression and why we should always have a smile in our face like we're freaking psychopaths or sociopaths. I don't know. But once we have established that, once we have established that it's perfectly normal to have up and down because things happen in people's life, animals get depressed. What the hell? Animals get depressed, sad, depressed, there is always the Babylonian word change to make it even
Right.
worse or less important, right? Okay. And so once we have established that, I wanted to get across with people that a lot of these symptoms that they are called depression, anxiety, paranoia, a lot of these symptoms are none less than bacteria that we have inside of our body that the medical science does not recognize because there is no diagnostic on purpose. There is not diagnostic on our modern world, the high-tech world. Exists no diagnostic to determine that you have this type of bacteria. And medical school professionals are not trained to even recognize the symptoms of this. And so once you understand that, you understand that the old pharmaceutical for labeled as antidepressant is a scam. It's a big scam. Everything is a scam. The old diagnosis of depression is a scam. Depression because you have a chemical imbalance. That is a scam in itself. But what is not a scam is the fact that you could have something, but it's not what they tell you it is. And so I think that's the most important things to determine through our whole conversation, that there are people who are depressed
Well, see,
for the
it
reason
fits.
that you explained, because these bacteria do take hostage of your red blood cells.
And what I just outlined earlier, what broke it for me
Go ahead.
is in traditional Chinese medicine, they say if you want to understand what anxiety is, hold your breath. Well, right then, I mean, that is the perfect
Mm-hmm.
object lesson that taught me it's hypoxia. So if you hold your breath, you get anxious because, oh, fuck, you can't
Mm-hmm.
breathe. And the brain is starving, the body is starving, and what does it want? Oxygen. And so, in a way, if you actually understand the lethal humor of these creatures, they're saying yeah, we think it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. Yeah, that chemical is called oxygen. It doesn't require an exotic, thank you, an exotic carbon-based
Exactly.
compound to like
Exactly.
mess with the neurotransmitters. Where if you pull open the PDR for any of these psych drugs, it will say the mechanism of action is unknown, but it is thought, we think, we believe, we feel that it works on this pathway. And anybody that's ever detoxed people from antidepressants and anti-anxieties will say all this bullshit about serotonin, it is all that. It's bullshit. These drugs don't work on that pathway.
Hmm.
And that's why trying to address, coming off of them from that pathway fails every time, because what they're saying in the books are just absolutely outright lies with the official seal on it. And what fascinated me is that 80% of the host
Exactly.
80% of the host serotonin comes from microbes in your guts. And so we're back to microbes again. And so if you've got
Uh-huh.
dysbiosis in your guts, you're not going to
Hmm.
get 80% of your serotonin, and taking a drug to like eke out, it's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So you're just basically trying to make the best of the serotonin you got. But if you're not making more, if you're not making enough, then that drug is just limping you along. And then here's the demonic part about it: it creates
Hmm.
genetic upregulation of more receptors for the little bit that the drug kept in circulation. And now you have more receptors, and so you still have less serotonin because your guts are messed up, because your bugs were destroyed probably by tetanus inoculation, and you can never get out of that. The
Yeah.
doctors call it the death spiral. I call it the toilet swirl, and you're going down the drain. And I've seen two of our best
Yeah.
little red hens destroyed by Valium because they couldn't get out of that death spiral. And then we're talking about that paper that was saying that the use of
Awesome.
antidepressants actually makes the bugs stronger inside the host. And it's like you can never break free, because they literally they created GMOs inside the host with a drug that had no usefulness whatsoever for the host, but was designed specifically to make the superbug.
For the parasite.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
everything that you've said so far shows exactly a theory that I was promoting all the way back to 1978. When I observed the world as a teenager, I'm looking at it and going, you hear this word psychosomatic. Something's wrong with your head, and then you feel it on the, in your viscera. And even, as a teenager, I realized this is bullshit. It's got to be somatopsycho. And so everything that you said, so let's
Hmm.
take it from the view of Bartonella. Bartonella gets into your red blood cell. It affects oxygen transport. Oxygen is necessary for the brain. If you don't have oxygen, then you've got that hold your breath scenario. You got your hypoxia. You've got anxiety, panic, and depression. So, are you having a panic attack, or are your blood cells just so heavily parasitized by cat scratch fever that you can't literally metabolically breathe? So that's somatopsycho.
Correct. Correct.
The body was so burdened that you can't breathe, and it's acting out. It's screaming in the only way that it can, and no fucking buddy is listening to the body. The host isn't listening to the body because they deferred all their medical care to somebody in a white coat that turned out to be a government assassin. Their family
Hmm.
isn't listening to them because there's an entire societal structure built around, well, you're crazier than fuck, we're going to have you committed. And the doctor ain't listening to them because they literally are the first handmaiden servants of the bug. Oops.
That's right.
And
they don't know themselves most of the time.
And they weren't lying. That's the beautiful part of this lethal joke. They weren't lying. Depression is from a chemical imbalance in the brain, but it's just oxygen. It is not serotonin. It's not something complicated. It's not something.
And it's not an imbalance that you have. Right. But within that diagnosis that they tell you chemical imbalance, it's not quantified. Okay, first of all, the fact that this chemical imbalance is not quantified, to me, it's a big red flag of the big bullshit theory, right. And so you're giving somebody some dosage of something based on what? Some clinical trial. And, right. Because maybe some people, again, because we have so many different mineral and compounds inside our body. It's not that we're plugging in the blood results of somebody and tell you, oh yeah, Mr. A has this chemical imbalance with these compounds. He needs this much of this compound, this much of this compound. A typical example is people who are depressed or they have bipolar. They give them lithium because lithium is one of those compounds that they seem to be low in some people who suffer from bipolar disorder. Well, when they give people lithium, it's just a nominal dose. It's not like specific for that person. It's all a trial and error. Right. It's also very interesting that a lot of people who have low lithium. Okay, well, another thing is a lot of people who have low lithium are people diagnosed with Lyme disease. Now, because we know already that within the diagnosis of Lyme disease, it could be, is that Borrelia that is causing low lithium? Is that Bartonella? Or is it some other pathogen that we don't know? Because there's like 9-10 different pathogens right in our body having a camp day out there, So the question it is to me, like the old diagnostic is just so bad. No, seriously, it is. To me, it's very interesting that people just accept this kind of theories because they are theories. They're not set in stone. They are total theories, and they just take whatever substance is given to them with a hope. So in science, especially in psychiatry, there is a lot of hope and faith. So it sounds like religion to you. It started to be closer and closer to religion. Hope and faith, right? The two words, okay. And so, that's what I would really like for people to take in consideration, start thinking that maybe some of the problems that we have mentally, the fatigue, the chronic fatigue, which, by the way, chronic fatigue feeds itself from time to time. But like you said, most chronic fatigue is due to low oxygen in your red blood cells. And if you don't have a good diagnostic that can identify that, you can go to 10 different specialists. They can never figure out what's wrong with you because they have no idea. They were never trained for that kind of stuff.
Well, they'll put the finger cuff on your your finger and look at your oxygen saturation and go, well, it's within range. And I found out because I got exposed to some chemicals.
It's within the standard, the range. Yeah.
I got exposed to chemicals at work and I couldn't breathe. And they put the finger cuff on and says, well, it looks okay. And I said, I feel like I'm starving for oxygen. Well, we could do a arterial draw and measure it there. I said, do it. It's like, you don't tell me what you can do. Fucking, do the diagnostics. And so they used my hand. They went into an artery in my hand, did a draw, and well, don't you know? The finger cuff said I was absolutely fine, had a perfect saturation, and the arterial draw said that, oh yeah, it's not getting where it needs to be. And who would know that?
So the finger cuff is stupid. Basically, you're telling me. They use that. They use that now for COVID, they like, oh, okay, your oxygen level is good. So if that says 99, you probably are 10 or 20 points below. Oh, you're already fucked.
Yeah,
Man.
exactly. Yeah.
I told you the diagnosis is designed to fail. Okay.
Wrong.
So we have determined that the diagnostic is designed to fail. Oh my God. Well, I think we can wrap it up.
Okay.
No, I think I'm saying I think we can wrap it up. We have said
sure,
probably everything we wanted to say on this.
We can.
I just. I don't know if you have anything else to add, and I hope this was interesting. To me, it was.
Oh, I think it was absolutely fascinating. And I hope people understand that, although we seem to be talking in circles, that's what life is. It's a continuum. All the facts are related to other facts, and they're coming at you fast. And so some people say that they listen to your shows sometimes more than once. Listen to it again, because this is Our Lady of Sardinia. She's one of our Little Red Hens. I'll probably do an introduction at the beginning of this. I'll resplice the recording. And she's one of our top researchers on what is called Lyme disease. But of course, you've heard right now that Lyme is much more than just the spirochetes. So loved having a talk with you. Let's do it again on any topic.